Dr. Zara Kethery stared at the medical readout on her tablet, the blue glow casting shadows across her scaled features. The numbers hadn't changed in 3 years, but she checked them anyway. Spinal compression at vertebrae T12, L1. Complete loss of motor function below the waist. Prognosis, permanent paralysis. The irony wasn't lost on her. As one of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists, she had spent decades studying the remarkable adaptability of countless species across the Galactic Federation. Yet here she sat, trapped in a hoverchair on the research station orbiting Kepler 442b, unable to adapt to her own circumstances. Dr. Kethery? The voice belonged to Commander Thex, a tall Altarian with silver skin and concerned purple eyes. The morning briefing is about to begin. Zara manipulated her chair's controls with practiced efficiency, gliding through the sterile corridors of Research Station Prometheus. The station hummed with activity as scientists from 12 different species worked together to catalog the biodiversity of the unexplored world below. It was supposed to be the pinnacle of her career. Instead, it felt like a constant reminder of everything she'd lost. The accident had happened during a routine survey mission on Proxima Centauri b. A seismic event had triggered a landslide while her team was collecting samples in a deep canyon. The others had managed to reach their shuttle in time. Zara had not. The falling rocks had crushed her lower spine and pinned her for 6 hours before rescue arrived. The best medical technology in the Federation had saved her life, but couldn't repair the specific type of nerve damage she'd sustained. Her species, the Valdorians, had particularly complex spinal structures that made such injuries nearly impossible to treat. She was told to be grateful she was alive. She was told to focus on what she could still do. She was told many things, but none of them helped her sleep at night. The briefing room buzzed with conversation as Zara entered. Representatives from the Federation Science Council, station personnel, and research team leaders filled the circular chamber. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed the planet below in stunning detail. Vast forests of crystalline trees stretched across continents, while bioluminescent oceans pulsed with unknown life forms. As you all know, announced Director Vosk, a distinguished Tellurian with bronze skin, we've been granted final approval for surface operations. After 18 months of orbital surveys, we're ready to establish our first research outpost. Excited murmurs filled the room. This was what they'd all been waiting for. The chance to study an entirely new biosphere up close, to make discoveries that would advance scientific understanding across the galaxy. Dr. Kethery will lead the xenobiology team, Director Vosk continued, and Zara's heart sank. Your expertise with adaptive ecosystems makes you the ideal choice for initial planetary assessment. Zara felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. She saw the mixture of respect and pity in their expressions. They all knew her reputation. They also all knew about her condition. Director, she began carefully. Perhaps it would be better if Dr. Marlox led the surface team. The terrain surveys indicate significant challenges that might be difficult for someone in my condition. The room fell silent. Dr. Marlox, a capable Zentaurian researcher, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Director Vosk's expression remained neutral, but Zara could see the disappointment in his eyes. If that's your preference, Doctor, he said finally, we'll make the necessary adjustments. After the meeting, Zara returned to her quarters feeling more isolated than ever. Through her viewport, she could see the planet's surface rotating slowly below. Somewhere down there were discoveries waiting to be made, ecosystems that could reshape their understanding of life itself. And she would experience it all through secondhand reports and orbital scans. She was reviewing preliminary surface data when her door chimed. Enter, she called, not looking up from her screen. Dr. Kethery? I'm Marcus Webb. Zara turned to see a human male standing in her doorway. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with sandy brown hair and bright green eyes that seemed to take in every detail of her quarters. He wore the standard jumpsuit of a Federation engineer, but something about his posture suggested military training. Mr. Webb, she acknowledged. I don't believe we've met. I just came aboard yesterday, Marcus explained, stepping into the room with her permission. I'm part of the engineering support team for the surface operations. I heard about your situation. Zara's jaw tightened. My situation? The surface mission, Marcus clarified quickly, raising his hands in a peacekeeping gesture. I know you wanted to lead the xenobiology team planetside. That's very kind of you to take an interest, Zara said coldly. But I'm afraid the matter is settled. The terrain is simply not suitable for someone with my limitations. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her hoverchair with the intense focus of someone solving a puzzle. Have you seen the preliminary geological surveys? The question caught Zara off guard. Of course. What? Lot of vertical terrain. Deep ravines, cliff faces, unstable ground in several sectors. Marcus's eyes met hers. Honestly, most of the species on this station would have trouble navigating some of those areas on foot. Your point being? My point being that maybe the problem isn't your chair. Maybe the problem is thinking that legs are the only way to explore an alien world. Zara stared at him. In 3 years, no one had ever suggested that her condition might actually be an advantage in certain situations. The idea was so foreign, she wasn't sure how to respond. I've been reviewing your research, Marcus continued. Your work on the adaptive ecosystems of Gliese 667c was brilliant. The way you identified the symbiotic relationships between the quantum fungi and the crystalline root systems changed how we think about planetary biology. That was field work, Zara said quietly. Ground surveys, sample collection, direct observation. Things I can't do anymore. Says who? The simple question hung in the air between them. Zara had heard variations of it before from well-meaning colleagues and medical staff. But something about the way Marcus said it was different. He wasn't offering empty encouragement or false hope. He was asking a genuine engineering question. The medical board, she said finally. Federation safety protocols. Common sense. Marcus walked to her viewport, looking down at the planet below. I spent 8 years in the human colonial marines before I became an engineer. Saw plenty of supposedly impossible situations get solved with the right equipment and the right attitude. This isn't a military operation, Mr. Webb. No, it's not, he agreed. It's exploration, discovery, the advancement of scientific knowledge that could benefit billions of beings across the galaxy. He turned back to her. Seems like the kind of thing worth finding creative solutions for. Zara found herself studying this human with growing curiosity. She'd worked with humans before and had always been impressed by their adaptability and determination. But Marcus Webb seemed to possess those qualities in unusual abundance. What exactly are you suggesting? She asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time in years, Zara felt a spark of something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to stop thinking about limitations, he said, and start thinking about possibilities. That evening, Zara found herself in the station's observation lounge, a vast transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of the stars and the planet below. It was late in the station's day cycle, and most of the other researchers had retired to their quarters. She came here often when she needed to think. Marcus Webb's words echoed in her mind. For 3 years, she'd accepted the verdict of the medical board, the limitations imposed by Federation safety protocols, the well-meaning advice of colleagues who urged her to focus on what she could still do from orbit. But what if they were all wrong? What if the problem wasn't her inability to walk, but everyone else's inability to imagine alternatives? She thought about her early career, the discoveries that had made her reputation in the xenobiology community. Every breakthrough had come from questioning accepted wisdom, from looking at familiar problems from new angles. When had she stopped applying that same principle to her own life? The planet rotated slowly beneath her, its continents shifting in and out of view. Somewhere down there were ecosystems unlike anything in the known galaxy. Life forms that had evolved in isolation for millions of years. Secrets that could advance the Federation's understanding of biology, evolution, and the fundamental nature of life itself. And she was going to experience it all through data streams and secondhand reports, because everyone, herself included, had decided that wheels were incompatible with exploration. Marcus Webb had asked a simple question. Says who? The more Zara thought about it, the more she realized she didn't have a good answer. The medical board had declared her unfit for field work, but when had they become experts in xenobiology? Federation safety protocols were designed for standard humanoid physiology, but when had one-size-fits-all solutions ever been adequate for the diversity of life in the galaxy? For the first time in 3 years, Dr. Zara Kethery began to wonder if her story was really over, or if it was just beginning a new chapter. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Long-range sensors had detected massive electromagnetic anomalies in the planet's northern hemisphere, readings that suggested the presence of artificial structures. The discovery sent shockwaves through the research station. What they had assumed to be an uninhabited world might actually be home to an advanced civilization. Director Voss called an emergency meeting, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," he announced to the assembled research teams, "we may be looking at the most significant discovery in Federation history." The holographic display showed a continent-sized landmass where geometric patterns were visible even from orbit. Structures that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in perfect mathematical arrangements. Energy readings that defied explanation. "A full survey mission is being organized," Director Voss continued. "Every department will be involved. We'll need our best people on the surface as soon as possible." Dr. Marlox shifted in his seat. "Director, with respect, the xenobiology analysis will be crucial for understanding any life forms we encounter. Perhaps Dr. Kethery should reconsider leading the surface team." All eyes turned to Zara. She felt the familiar weight of expectation, the mixture of hope and doubt from her colleagues. But this time, something was different. Marcus Webb's words from the previous day had planted a seed of possibility that was growing stronger by the hour. "I appreciate your confidence, Dr. Marlox," she said carefully. "But the logistics remain challenging." "Actually," Marcus Webb spoke up from the back of the room, "I've been giving that some thought." Director Vosk looked surprised. "Mr. Webb, you have something to contribute." Marcus stood up, and Zara noticed that several other humans in the room were paying particularly close attention. "Sir, I've been reviewing the surface survey data and the proposed mission parameters. I think there might be ways to address the mobility challenges that haven't been fully explored, such as adaptive equipment solutions, specialized mobility platforms designed specifically for alien terrain exploration. The engineering challenges are significant, but not insurmountable." Dr. Renthak, the station's chief medical officer, shook his head dismissively. "Mr. Webb, while I appreciate your optimism, Federation medical protocols are quite clear. Dr. Kethery's condition makes surface operations inadvisable." "With respect, Doctor," Marcus replied, "Federation medical protocols were written for standard exploration scenarios. This situation is anything but standard." The room erupted in discussion. Some colleagues supported the idea of finding creative solutions, while others emphasized the very real safety concerns. Zara listened to the debate with growing amazement. For the first time in 3 years, people were talking about her limitations as problems to be solved rather than simply accepted. "Enough," Director Vosk said finally. "Mr. Webb, I appreciate your initiative, but this is a matter for the senior staff to discuss. We'll take everything under advisement." As the meeting dispersed, Zara found herself approaching Marcus. "Mr. Webb, I need to ask you something." "Of course. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Why invest your time and energy in solving my problems?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "Dr. Kethery, my species has a saying, adapt and overcome. It's not just a military slogan for us. It's a fundamental part of who we are." He gestured toward the holographic display, still showing the mysterious structures on the planet's surface. "We're potentially looking at first contact with a new civilization. The Federation will need every talented scientist it can get down there. But more than that," he paused, meeting her eyes directly. "I've read your research. Your approach to xenobiology is unlike anything I've seen. You don't just catalog species, you understand ecosystems. You see connections that others miss. That kind of insight could be the difference between successful contact and catastrophic misunderstanding. But the practical challenges are exactly that. Practical. Engineering problems." Marcus smiled. "And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's engineering our way around problems that everyone else accepts as impossible." That afternoon, Zara received an unexpected visitor. Commander Sarah Chun, the station's human military liaison, knocked on her door with a formal air that immediately put Zara on alert. "Commander Chun," Zara acknowledged. "What can I do for you?" "Actually, Doctor," I'm here to discuss what we might be able to do for you. 8 years of colonial marine service, followed by advanced engineering degrees from the Terra Technical Institute. Commander Chin's expression softened slightly. One of our best problem solvers, actually. I see. Dr. Kethery, I'm going to be direct with you. The human contingent on this station has been following your career for some time. Your work is highly regarded among our scientific community. That's flattering. But I'm not sure where this conversation is heading. Commander Chun moved to the viewport, looking down at the planet below. Humanity joined the Federation 73 years ago. We're still the new species, still proving ourselves worthy of membership. But we've learned that our greatest contributions come from our willingness to challenge accepted limitations. She turned back to Zara. Marcus Webb isn't just offering to help you overcome a mobility challenge, Doctor. He's offering to demonstrate that human engineering ingenuity combined with alien expertise can achieve things neither could accomplish alone. And what does the human contingent get out of this arrangement? The satisfaction of knowing we helped advance Federation science. And, perhaps, if things go well, a demonstration that humanity's approach to problem-solving has value in the broader galactic community. Zara studied Commander Chin carefully. She was beginning to understand that Marcus Webb's offer might be about more than simple altruism. The humans on the station saw an opportunity to showcase their capabilities while helping a respected scientist return to field work. What exactly would this assistance involve, she asked. That would be up to you and Marcus to determine. But I can tell you that the human engineering team has some very interesting ideas about adaptive mobility systems. And the Federation authorities, Director Vosk, the medical board, would have difficulty arguing against a system that actually enhances safety and capability rather than compromising it, Commander Chin said with a smile, especially if it's tested thoroughly and meets all relevant safety standards. That evening, Zara made a decision that would change the course of her life. She sent a message to Marcus Webb requesting a meeting to discuss his ideas in detail. For the first time in 3 years, she was ready to stop accepting limitations and start exploring possibilities. The next morning, Marcus arrived at her quarters with a portable holographic projector and an enthusiasm that was almost infectious. Before we start, Zara said, I need to know something. Commander Chin visited me yesterday. She indicated that helping me might serve broader human interests on this station. Marcus nodded. She's right. But that doesn't change the fact that you deserve the chance to do the work you're passionate about. Sometimes the best solutions serve multiple interests. Fair enough, Zara said. Show me what you have in mind. Marcus activated the projector, filling the room with a three-dimensional schematic of something that looked like no piece of equipment Zara had ever seen. It was clearly designed around her hover chair, but extended and enhanced it in ways that seemed almost science-fictional. This is a rough concept for what we're calling an adaptive terrain exploration platform, Marcus began. It maintains all the functionality of your current chair while adding capabilities specifically designed for field research. The holographic device unfolded before Zara's eyes, revealing extendable mechanical limbs, sample collection apparatus, environmental sensors, and mobility systems that could handle virtually any terrain. The base unit is your familiar hover system for standard movement, Marcus explained, manipulating the hologram to show different configurations. But when you encounter challenging terrain, these adaptive limbs extend to provide stability and mobility options. Zara stared at the display in amazement. It wasn't just a mobility aid. It was a complete research platform that would give her capabilities beyond what any humanoid researcher could achieve on foot. This is, she began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the possibilities. Crazy, Marcus suggested with a grin. Revolutionary, she finished. Absolutely revolutionary. The engineering workshop buzzed with activity as Marcus Webb and his team worked through the night. Dr. Zara Kethery had given her tentative approval for the project, but turning the holographic concept into reality would require precision, innovation, and more than a little human stubbornness. The power distribution systems are the biggest challenge, announced engineer Lisa Park, a compact woman with oil-stained fingers and sharp eyes. We need enough energy to operate all the adaptive systems while maintaining the chair's existing hover capabilities. What about a hybrid approach? Suggested Dr. James Morrison, the team's materials specialist. Combine traditional power cells with kinetic energy collection from the mechanical systems? Marcus studied the prototype frame they'd been assembling. It looked crude compared to the elegant holographic design, but it represented 3 days of intense work and creative problem-solving. The Federation Safety Board is going to have concerns, warned engineer Chen Lu, looking up from a tablet full of technical specifications. This goes well beyond standard equipment modifications. Then, we make sure it exceeds safety standards instead of just meeting them, Marcus replied. Triple redundancy on all critical systems. Emergency protocols for every conceivable failure mode. Dr. Kethery arrived at the workshop just as the morning shift was beginning. She moved through the cluttered space with practiced ease, her hoverchair navigating between work tables and equipment with fluid precision. "How are we progressing?" she asked, examining the prototype with professional interest. "Better than expected," Marcus said, unable to hide his satisfaction. "The basic frame is solid. We've solved the power distribution issues and completed initial testing on the adaptive limb systems." "And the not-so-good news?" Lisa Park looked up from her workstation. "The neural interface systems are proving more complex than anticipated. Your species' nervous system has some unique characteristics that require specialized calibration." Zara nodded thoughtfully. The Valdorian nervous system was indeed unique among Federation species, more complex than human neurology, but also more adaptable in some ways. It was one of the reasons her spinal injury had been so difficult to treat, but it might also be an advantage in interfacing with advanced technology. "I might be able to help with that," she offered. "My medical files include detailed neurological mapping from the injury treatment. Plus, I have some experience with biomechanical interfaces from my research work." "That would be incredible," James Morrison said eagerly. "We've been working from general Valdorian physiological data, but individual calibration would make the interface far more responsive." As they discussed technical details, Zara found herself impressed by the human team's approach. They didn't just solve problems, they anticipated them. Every system had backup systems, every backup had alternatives, and every alternative was designed to be better than the original. "There's something else," Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. "Director Vosk has requested a formal presentation of the project. Tomorrow morning, full senior staff meeting." Already, Zara felt a familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. The prototype isn't even complete. No, but it's complete enough to demonstrate the concept. And, honestly, we need official approval to proceed with the more advanced systems. Lisa Park wiped her hands on a rag and joined the conversation. "Dr. Kethery, I have to ask, are you ready for this? There's going to be resistance from the medical board, probably some political concerns from the Federation representatives." Zara was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. 3 days ago, she would have said no without hesitation. The thought of defending her choices in front of the senior staff would have seemed impossibly daunting. But something had changed during her time in the workshop. Watching the human team work, seeing their absolute confidence that every problem had a solution, had awakened something in her that had been dormant for 3 years. She remembered what it felt like to push boundaries, to challenge accepted wisdom, to believe that knowledge was worth taking risks for. "Yes," she said finally. "I'm ready." The next morning, Zara entered the senior staff meeting with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The prototype platform, still rough around the edges but functional, accompanied her. Several staff members stared openly at the mechanical appendages and sensor arrays that had been integrated with her familiar hoverchair. Director Vosk called the meeting to order with his usual efficiency. "Dr. Kethery, Mr. Webb, I understand you have a proposal regarding the surface mission logistics." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, standing beside a holographic projector. "We've developed what we believe is a practical solution to the mobility challenges that have been limiting Dr. Kethery's field work." Dr. Renthak, the chief medical officer, leaned forward with obvious skepticism. "Mr. Webb, I appreciate your initiative, but Federation medical protocols exist for good reasons. Dr. Kethery's condition creates significant safety risks in challenging environments, which is exactly why we need better equipment instead of accepting limitations," Marcus responded. He activated the holographic display, showing the full technical specifications of the adaptive platform. The Enhanced Mobility Research Platform provides capabilities that exceed standard humanoid mobility in difficult terrain, he explained. Independent power systems, environmental protection, emergency medical monitoring, and direct communication links to orbital support. Commander Thex, the Altarian security officer, studied the display with professional interest. What about evacuation procedures? If Dr. Kethery encounters an emergency situation, how do we extract her safely? The platform includes integrated emergency beacon systems and can be configured for rapid medical transport, Lisa Park replied from her seat in the observer section. Actually, the emergency protocols are more comprehensive than standard away team equipment. Dr. Marlox raised his hand. I don't question the engineering, but is this really necessary? The xenobiology team can function effectively with the personnel we already have cleared for surface operations. Zara had been listening to the discussion in silence, but this comment prompted her to speak up. Dr. Marlox, with all due respect, the electromagnetic anomalies we've detected suggest we may be dealing with life forms unlike anything in our databases. My experience with adaptive ecosystems could be crucial for understanding what we encounter. Dr. Kethery, Director Vosk interrupted gently. No one questions your expertise. The concern is whether the potential benefits justify the risks and resource expenditure. Marcus stepped forward. Director, if I may, this isn't just about one mission or one scientist. We're potentially looking at a revolutionary approach to scientific exploration. Equipment that enhances researcher capabilities rather than limiting them to lowest common denominator safety standards. Federation Representative Korvac, a distinguished Centaurian who rarely spoke during meetings, cleared his throat. Mr. Webb, you're asking us to approve experimental equipment for use in what may be a first contact situation. The political implications alone are significant. Sir, Zara said, maneuvering her prototype platform to face the Federation representative directly. Every major scientific advancement in Federation history has required someone to take calculated risks in pursuit of knowledge. The discovery of faster-than-light travel, the development of universal translators, the mapping of subspace communication networks. All of these breakthroughs happened because scientists were willing to push beyond accepted limitations. The room fell silent. Zara could feel the weight of every gaze in the chamber, but for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel diminished by their attention. The platform we've developed doesn't compromise safety, she continued. It enhances it. The question isn't whether we can afford to let me join the surface mission. The question is whether we can afford to limit our scientific capabilities because of outdated assumptions about mobility requirements. Dr. Renthak looked uncomfortable. Dr. Kethery, I understand your passion for the work, but medical protocols are guidelines, not immutable laws, Zara interrupted. And guidelines should evolve as our capabilities evolve. Director Vosk studied the holographic display for a long moment, then looked at the prototype platform that Zara occupied. Mr. Webb, how long would it take to complete a fully functional version of this system? 2 weeks for basic functionality, 4 weeks for full optimization and testing, Marcus replied promptly. And, Dr. Kethery, you're willing to undergo the necessary training and medical monitoring? Absolutely. The director considered this for several moments while the room waited in tense silence. Finally, he nodded slowly. Very well. You have preliminary approval to proceed with development and testing. Dr. Renthak, I want comprehensive medical monitoring protocols established. Commander Thex, coordinate with Mr. Webb on safety systems and emergency procedures. Sir, Dr. Renthak protested. I must register my formal objection to this decision. Noted and logged, Dr. Director Vosk replied calmly. However, Dr. Kethery raises valid points about the evolution of our capabilities. We'll proceed with appropriate caution. As the meeting dispersed, Zara felt a surge of emotions she hadn't experienced in years. Excitement, nervousness, determination, and something else, a sense of possibility that had been absent from her life since the accident. Marcus approached her as other staff members filed out of the room. Congratulations, Dr. Kethery. You just bought us 4 weeks to build something amazing. We bought ourselves 4 weeks, she corrected. This is a partnership, remember? Right. Partnership. Marcus grinned. I hope you're ready to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. Mr. Webb, Zara said, matching his smile. I've been ready for 3 years. The next month passed in a blur of intensive development, testing, and refinement. The human engineering team worked with an intensity that impressed even the workaholic Valdorians. They tested every system, anticipated every failure mode, and continuously improved the platform's capabilities. Dr. Morrison developed new materials that were both lighter and stronger than anything in the Federation's standard inventory. Lisa Park created power management systems that could operate for weeks without external charging. Chen Lu designed interface protocols that made the platform's controls as intuitive as natural movement. But it was the collaboration between Marcus and Zara that truly brought the project to life. Her understanding of biological systems combined with his engineering expertise created innovations that neither could have achieved alone. The sensory integration is incredible, Zara marveled during one of their late-night testing sessions. The platform's environmental sensors provided her with information about atmospheric composition, electromagnetic fields, biological activity, and terrain stability in real time. It's like having a dozen specialized researchers in one system, Marcus agreed. Actually, it's better. Everything is integrated and immediately available. The platform had evolved far beyond a mobility aid. It was a complete research environment that amplified Zara's capabilities in ways that seemed almost magical. Sample collection arms could gather specimens from impossible angles. Environmental sensors could detect life signs at the molecular level. Communication systems maintained constant contact with orbital support while providing real-time data, sharing with ground teams. But the most remarkable feature was the platform's adaptability. Like the ecosystems Zara studied, it could reconfigure itself to meet changing environmental demands. Stable surfaces called for efficient hover mode. Rough terrain activated the mechanical limbs for unprecedented mobility. Emergency situations triggered protective protocols that could shield the operator from hostile environments. We've created something unique, Marcus said during one of their final calibration sessions. This isn't just assistive technology, it's enhancement technology. Zara nodded, testing the platform's response to her neural commands. The interface had become so natural that she barely had to think about controlling the mechanical systems. They responded to her intentions as smoothly as her original limbs once had. There's something I need to tell you, she said, bringing the platform to a halt in the center of the workshop. When I first agreed to this project, I thought you were helping me return to who I used to be. Marcus looked puzzled. And now? Now I realize you've helped me become someone I never was before. Someone better. She gestured at the platform's sophisticated systems. I have capabilities now that no field researcher has ever possessed. Mobility, sensory input, data processing, sample collection, everything is integrated and enhanced. So you're happy with the result? Zara's laugh was pure joy. Happy? Marcus, I'm not just ready to return to field work. I'm ready to revolutionize it. 3 weeks after the senior staff meeting, Dr. Zara Kethery stood in the shuttle bay preparing for her first surface mission in 3 years. The completed platform was a masterpiece of engineering that bore only passing resemblance to her original hoverchair. Sleek adaptive limbs were folded against the chassis in travel mode, sensor arrays gleamed with polished precision, and every system hummed with quiet efficiency. Commander Thex performed the final safety inspection with characteristic thoroughness. All emergency beacons are functional. Medical monitoring is active. Communication systems show green across all channels. Environmental protection? Asked Dr. Renthak, who had insisted on personally reviewing every safety protocol despite his official objections to the project. Sealed atmosphere for up to 6 hours, radiation shielding, temperature regulation, and emergency medical systems, Lisa Park replied from her monitoring station. Honestly, she's safer than the rest of the away team. Director Vosk entered the shuttle bay with the dignity befitting the historic nature of the mission. Dr. Kethery, are you ready to make history? Zara looked around the shuttle bay at the faces of colleagues who had become friends, engineers who had become partners, and humans who had taught her that limitations were just problems waiting for solutions. Director, she said with confidence that surprised even her, I've been ready my entire career. The shuttle descended through the alien atmosphere with the steady precision of Federation technology, but Zara's heart raced with anticipation she hadn't felt since her first field assignment decades ago. Through the viewport, the landscape of Kepler 442b revealed itself in stunning detail. Crystalline formations that caught and refracted the system's binary suns, vast plains of bioluminescent vegetation, and, in the distance, the geometric structures that had drawn them here. Touchdown in 3 minutes, announced Pilot Chun, one of Marcus's human colleagues. Landing zone shows stable geological conditions and breathable atmosphere. Dr. Marlox reviewed his scanner readings with obvious nervousness. The electromagnetic signatures are even stronger from this altitude. Whatever created those structures, it's still active. Which is exactly why we need our best xenobiologist on the ground, Commander Thex said, checking his own equipment one final time. The Altarian security officer had initially opposed the mission but had become one of Zara's strongest advocates after witnessing her platform's capabilities during testing. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper on a crystalline plain about 10 kilometers from the nearest artificial structures. As the landing ramp lowered, Zara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with exploration in the first place. Environmental readings look good, Marcus reported from his position at the shuttle's engineering station. Atmospheric composition is within normal parameters. Gravity is 0.9 standard, and I'm not detecting any immediate biological hazards. Zara maneuvered her platform to the shuttle's exit, the enhanced mobility system responding to her neural commands with fluid precision. For a moment, she hesitated at the threshold between the familiar safety of the shuttle and the unknown world beyond. Second thoughts? Asked Dr. Marlox gently. No, Zara replied with growing confidence. First time in 3 years I've felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She activated the platform's full sensor array and glided down the landing ramp. The moment her systems touched alien soil, data began flooding her displays. Atmospheric composition, soil analysis, electromagnetic readings, biological indicators. Information that would have taken a standard away team hours to collect was available to her instantly. Remarkable, she breathed, studying the readings with professional fascination. The crystalline formations aren't just geological. They're integrated with the biological systems. The entire ecosystem is biomechanical. Marcus joined her on the surface, his own sensors active but crude compared to her platform's sophisticated arrays. Biomechanical how? The plants are incorporating metallic elements from the crystal formations into their cellular structure. And the crystals are growing in response to biological activity. Zara extended one of her platform's sample collection arms, carefully extracting a specimen from a nearby formation. It's like the entire planet is a single, integrated organism. Commander Thex established a perimeter with military efficiency while Dr. Marlox began his own geological surveys. The team worked with the coordination that came from months of preparation, but Zara found herself operating at a level that surprised even her. The platform's mobility systems allowed her to traverse terrain that would have challenged humanoid researchers. When the team encountered a deep ravine blocking their path to the artificial structures, Zara simply reconfigured her mechanical limbs and descended the cliff face while the others were forced to find an alternate route. Dr. Kethery, Commander Thex's voice came through the communication system. Please maintain visual contact with the main team. Of course, Commander, she replied, but privately she marveled at her newfound independence. For 3 years, she had been dependent on others for mobility assistance. Now she was leading the way through challenging terrain. The artificial structures proved even more fascinating than the orbital surveys had suggested. Vast geometric patterns stretched across the landscape like circuit boards made of living crystal. Each formation pulsed with bioluminescent energy that followed complex mathematical rhythms. These aren't random, Zara announced, her platform's analytical systems processing patterns that would have taken human researchers days to identify. The geometric arrangements correspond to biological growth algorithms. Someone, or something, has been guiding the planet's ecosystem development for millennia. Guiding it toward what? Dr. Marlox asked, his voice tight with concern. Before Zara could respond, Her platform's proximity sensors detected movement within one of the larger crystalline formations. "We're not alone," she announced calmly. "Something is approaching from the northwest structure. Multiple biological signatures, approximately humanoid size." Commander Thex immediately activated defensive protocols while Dr. Marlox took cover behind a crystal outcropping. But Zara held her position, her platform's sensors providing detailed analysis of the approaching entities. "They're not hostile," she announced. "Slow, deliberate movement patterns. No weapon signatures. They're curious." The first of the beings emerged from the crystal formation with movements that seemed to flow like water given form. They were vaguely humanoid, but clearly adapted to their unique environment. Their skin had the same crystalline quality as the planet's formations, and they moved with a grace that suggested perfect harmony with their surroundings. "First contact protocols," Commander Thex announced, though his voice carried wonder rather than alarm. "Dr. Kethery, can your systems provide any information about their communication methods?" Zara's platform had already begun analyzing the electromagnetic patterns radiating from the beings. "They're using bioelectric fields for communication. Complex harmonic frequencies that carry sophisticated information patterns." One of the beings approached Zara directly, seemingly drawn by her platform's electromagnetic signature. It extended what might have been an arm toward her, and her sensors detected a flood of organized electromagnetic pulses. "They're trying to communicate," she realized. "The platform's systems are translating the patterns. It's mathematical, but there are emotional undertones. They are welcoming us." Marcus, who had been monitoring the encounter from the shuttle, spoke through the communication system. "Dr. Kethery, your platform's neural interface might be able to establish two-way communication. The electromagnetic harmonics could be modulated through the same systems that control the mechanical functions. Are you suggesting I try to talk to them directly through the platform?" Zara asked. "I'm suggesting your equipment might be uniquely suited for first contact with a bioelectric species," Marcus replied. "But the decision is yours." Zara looked at the crystalline being standing before her, its electromagnetic field pulsing with what her sensors interpreted as curiosity and intelligence. She thought about her career, her passion for understanding alien life, and the moment that had defined the last 3 years of her existence. She had come to this planet expecting to resume her old life as a field researcher. Instead, she found herself at the center of the most significant first contact event in Federation history, equipped with capabilities that no other researcher possessed. "I'm going to attempt direct contact," she announced, reconfiguring her platform's electromagnetic systems to match the being's communication frequency. "If this works, we'll be able to establish meaningful dialogue with a completely new form of life." The moment her platform's systems synchronized with the being's bioelectric field, Zara's consciousness exploded with alien thoughts and emotions. Not the crude translation of universal translators, but direct mind-to-mind contact mediated by the sophisticated interface Marcus and his team had created. Images flooded her awareness. The planet's history stretching across geological ages, the gradual development of a global consciousness that spanned every living thing, the patient cultivation of an ecosystem designed to welcome other forms of life. These beings hadn't just evolved on Kepler 442b, they had guided its evolution toward a specific purpose. "They call themselves the Shapers," she announced to her team, her voice filled with wonder. "They've been preparing this world for contact with other species. The electromagnetic anomalies we detected were beacon signals designed to attract explorers." "Preparing how?" Dr. Marlox asked. Zara's platform continued its unprecedented dialogue with the Shaper, information flowing between them with increasing sophistication. They wanted to create an environment where different forms of life could coexist and share knowledge. The biomechanical ecosystem can adapt to support virtually any type of biological entity. Commander Thex lowered his defensive stance as more Shapers emerged from the crystal formations. Each moved with the same fluid grace, their electromagnetic fields creating a complex symphony of communication that Zara's platform translated into comprehensible concepts. "They've been waiting for us," she continued. "Not humans specifically, but any species capable of understanding their purpose. They want to share their knowledge of biological adaptation and ecosystem management. Marcus's voice came through the communication system with barely contained excitement. Dr. Kethery, this is incredible. You're conducting first contact negotiations with a species that thinks in terms of entire planetary ecosystems. The scientific implications are staggering. But Zara was beginning to understand something even more profound. The Shapers weren't just offering to share knowledge. They were offering to help other species adapt their own worlds using the same biomechanical integration techniques that had created this paradise. They're not just explorers or scientists, she realized. They're gardeners on a galactic scale. They want to help the Federation create sustainable ecosystems throughout known space. The lead Shaper extended its field toward her again, and new images filled her awareness. Worlds transformed from barren rocks into thriving biospheres. Species that had exhausted their home planets learning to restore and enhance their environments. A galaxy where every inhabited world could support diverse forms of life in perfect harmony. This changes everything, Dr. Marlock said quietly. Yes, Zara agreed, her platform maintaining its communion with the alien consciousness. It does. As the first day of contact continued, Zara found herself serving as the primary interface between her species and a form of life that thought in terms of geological timescales and planetary transformation. Her platform's capabilities, designed to enhance mobility for a disabled researcher, had instead become the key to the most significant scientific breakthrough in Federation history. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, an accident had ended what she thought was her career as a field researcher. Today, that same accident, and the human determination to overcome its limitations, had made her the Federation's first ambassador to a civilization that could reshape the galaxy. Late that evening, as the team established base camp among the crystal formations, Zara found herself in conversation with Marcus through a private communication channel. Marcus, she said, I need to thank you. For what? For refusing to accept that my story was over. For believing that limitations are just problems waiting for solutions. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Zara, I need to tell you something. When I first proposed this project, I thought we were building equipment to help you return to your old life. And now I realize we built something that let you become who you were always meant to be. Zara looked out at the crystalline landscape where Shapers moved like living art through bioluminescent gardens that spanned continents. Tomorrow, she would continue her unprecedented dialogue with a species that could transform the Federation's understanding of life itself. She would serve as translator, ambassador, and bridge between forms of consciousness that had never before been able to communicate. It was exactly the career she had never dared to imagine, made possible by the refusal to accept that adaptation had limits. Marcus, she said, I think you're right. 6 months after first contact, Research Station Prometheus had transformed into the Federation's most important diplomatic and scientific outpost. Ships arrived daily bringing researchers, diplomats, and engineers eager to study the revolutionary biomechanical integration techniques the Shapers had developed over millions of years. Dr. Zara Kethery stood at the center of it all, her platform now upgraded with Shaper biomechanical enhancements that made it a hybrid of Federation technology and alien biological systems. The crystalline elements integrated into her mobility systems weren't just functional. They were alive, growing, and adapting to her needs in real time. The Diplomatic Council wants another status report, Director Vosk announced during the morning briefing, his voice carrying the weight of interstellar politics. Apparently, some member species are concerned about the implications of biomechanical integration. Zara sighed, manipulating her platform to face the assembled staff. 6 months of serving as the Federation's primary translator and cultural liaison with the Shapers had given her insights that even she sometimes found overwhelming. What kind of concerns? She asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. The usual, replied Ambassador Korvac, who had requested permanent assignment to the station. Fear of biological contamination, concerns about dependency on alien technology, questions about long-term security implications. Commander Chun, who had been promoted to station security chief, shook her head dismissively. Politicians. They're looking at the greatest scientific breakthrough in Federation history and worrying about bureaucratic procedures. To be fair, Dr. Renthak interjected. Some of their concerns have medical validity. We're talking about fundamental changes to how species interact with their environments. Zara had heard these arguments countless times over the past months. Fear, caution, bureaucratic resistance. All the familiar reactions that greeted every major advancement. But she had also seen the alternative. Perhaps, she said carefully, it would help if the council representatives could see the results firsthand. Marcus, who had become the project's lead engineer and Zara's closest collaborator, looked up from his technical readouts. You're suggesting a demonstration? I'm suggesting something more comprehensive, Zara replied. The Shapers have offered to host a Federation delegation on their homeworld. Full cultural and scientific exchange. The council representatives could see what biomechanical integration actually means instead of just reading reports. Director Vosk looked intrigued, but cautious. That would be unprecedented. No Federation officials have traveled to the Shaper homeworld, which is exactly why it's necessary, Zara argued. We can't make informed decisions about interspecies cooperation based on secondhand information. Ambassador Korvac leaned forward with diplomatic interest. Dr. Kethery, would such a visit be safe for traditional humanoid physiology? This was the question that went to the heart of the current political tensions. The Shaper homeworld was a biomechanical paradise, but it was designed for beings who could interface directly with living crystalline systems. Traditional Federation species would need significant technological assistance to survive, much less thrive, in such an environment. That's where the breakthrough comes in, Marcus said, activating a holographic display that showed the latest technological developments. We've learned to create temporary biomechanical interfaces that allow any species to experience Shaper environments safely. The display showed a series of adaptive suits that looked like sophisticated versions of Zara's platform. Each was customized for different species' physiological requirements while providing the biomechanical integration necessary for survival on the Shaper homeworld. These aren't permanent modifications, Dr. Morrison explained from his position at the engineering station. They're more like advanced environmental suits that happen to use living technology. Dr. Renthak studied the specifications with professional skepticism. The medical implications are still significant. We're talking about temporary biological integration with alien organisms. Which sounds terrifying until you experience it, Zara said simply. The biomechanical systems don't override your biology, they enhance it. You remain yourself, but with capabilities you never imagined. She demonstrated by interfacing with one of the Shaper crystal formations that had been installed in the briefing room. Immediately, the entire chamber filled with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the thoughts and emotions of everyone present. The crystals don't read your mind, she explained as the patterns shifted and flowed around them. They translate your bioelectric field into visible patterns. It's like having your thoughts become part of the environment. The display was beautiful and entirely non-threatening, but Zara could see the discomfort on several faces. Even after 6 months, many Federation species struggled with the concept of technology that was alive and responsive. The question, Ambassador Korvac said finally, is whether the Federation Council is ready for this level of integration. The question, Zara corrected gently, is whether we can afford not to be ready. The Shapers aren't offering to modify us. They're offering to teach us how to work in harmony with our environments instead of simply exploiting them. She gestured toward the holographic displays showing Shaper worlds throughout their region of the galaxy. Each was a masterpiece of biomechanical integration where different species lived in perfect ecological balance. They've solved resource scarcity, environmental degradation, and interspecies conflict through biological cooperation, she continued. These aren't theoretical solutions. They're proven techniques that have worked for millions of years. Marcus added, the technology transfer alone would advance Federation science by centuries. But the philosophical implications might be even more important. Director Vosk looked thoughtful. Philosophical how? The Shapers don't think in terms of conquering or controlling their environment, Zara explained. They think in terms of partnership and mutual enhancement. It's a fundamentally different approach to existence, and one that could reshape how Federation species approach everything from planetary development to interstellar exploration, Marcus added. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just discussing a diplomatic exchange or even a scientific collaboration. They were talking about a fundamental shift in how the Federation understood the relationship between technology and biology, between civilization and environment. Dr. Kethery, Ambassador Korvac said finally, if we were to propose such a delegation to the Council, would you be willing to serve as chief liaison? Zara felt a familiar surge of excitement mixed with responsibility. 6 months ago, she had been fighting for the right to return to basic field work. Now she was being asked to lead the most important diplomatic mission in Federation history. Ambassador, she said, I would be honored. 2 weeks later, Zara found herself aboard the Federation diplomatic vessel Unity as it approached the Shaper homeworld. The ship carried 12 representatives from major Federation species, all equipped with biomechanical interface suits designed by Marcus and his expanded engineering team. The vessel itself had been modified with Shaper biomechanical enhancements that made it partially alive. Crystalline conduits ran through the ship's corridors like veins, carrying both energy and information in ways that traditional Federation technology couldn't match. Initial scans of the homeworld are remarkable, reported Science Officer Tvak, a Vulcan whose logical nature was being severely tested by the biomechanical systems. The entire planetary surface appears to be one integrated organism. Ambassador Korvac, resplendent in his own biomechanical interface suit, studied the sensor readings with diplomatic fascination. Dr. Kethery, what should we expect when we arrive? Zara, her platform now fully integrated with the ship's biomechanical systems, accessed the collective knowledge she had gained through months of communion with Shaper consciousness. Welcome, she said simply. They're going to welcome us in ways that go beyond anything we're prepared for. The homeworld of the Shapers defied every assumption about planetary development. There were no cities in any recognizable sense, no division between natural and artificial, no distinction between living beings and their environment. The entire world pulsed with coordinated life that spanned continents and reached from the planet's core to its upper atmosphere. As the Unity descended through the biomechanical atmosphere, Zara felt the planet itself reaching out to greet them. Electromagnetic fields that carried welcome messages in harmonics that spoke directly to consciousness. Crystalline formations that grew in real time to create landing platforms perfectly suited to their ship's configuration. This is impossible, breathed Dr. Sethik, the Andorian representative, watching through the viewports as the landscape literally reshaped itself to accommodate their arrival. No, Zara corrected gently. This is what's possible when an entire civilization dedicates itself to biological harmony instead of technological dominance. The landing was like being embraced by the planet itself. Crystalline tendrils extended from the surface to interface gently with the ship's biomechanical systems, creating a seamless connection between vessel and world. The Federation delegates found themselves walking onto a surface that was somehow perfectly comfortable for each of their different physiological requirements. The Shapers who greeted them were unlike any they had encountered on Kepler 442b. These beings were clearly ancient, their crystalline forms integrated so completely with their environment that the boundary between individual and ecosystem was barely perceptible. Elder Shaper Corinth welcomes the Federation delegation. Zara translated as electromagnetic pulses flowed between her platform and the nearest crystalline being. They're honored by our willingness to experience their world directly. Ambassador Korvac stepped forward with diplomatic precision. Please convey our gratitude for their hospitality and our interest in learning about their civilization. The exchange that followed was unlike any diplomatic interaction in Federation history. Instead of formal negotiations or ceremonial presentations, the Shapers offered direct experience. They guided the delegation through biomechanical gardens where thoughts became visible as living light, laboratories where species from across the galaxy worked together on projects that span millennia, and vast libraries where knowledge was stored in the genetic patterns of crystalline organisms. They don't just study biology. Dr. Sethik marveled as he interfaced with a knowledge crystal that contained millions of years of evolutionary data. They participate in it. Representative Mbenga from the Human Colonial Administration was examining a biomechanical structure that served as both living space and research facility. The efficiency is incredible. No waste, no conflict between individual needs and collective resources. But it was the philosophical implications that proved most challenging for the Federation delegation. The Shapers didn't think in terms of individual achievement or species superiority. They thought in terms of collective enhancement and mutual symbiosis. They're offering to share everything, Zara explained during a private delegation meeting that evening. Not just their technology, but their entire approach to existence. Biomechanical integration that could transform every Federation world into something like this. The political implications are staggering, Ambassador Korvac said quietly. We're talking about fundamental changes to how Federation species organize their societies. Are we ready for that? Asked Dr. Sefik. Zara looked around at her colleagues, these representatives of species that had achieved interstellar travel and formed a galactic federation through determination and cooperation. She thought about her own journey, from disabled researcher to interspecies ambassador, made possible by the human refusal to accept limitations. Elder Shaper Corinth asked me something today, she said. They wanted to know if the Federation species were ready to evolve. What did you tell them? I told them that evolution isn't about being ready. It's about being willing to adapt when the opportunity arises. She gestured toward the viewports, where the Shaper homeworld pulsed with bioluminescent life that stretched beyond the horizon. This could be the future for every world in Federation space. Not conquest or exploitation, but genuine partnership between civilization and environment. And if the Council rejects the proposal? Zara was quiet for a moment, considering the question that had been weighing on her for months. Then, we'll have chosen fear over possibility, limitation over adaptation. And that choice will define what kind of species we become. The next morning brought an experience that would reshape the delegation's entire perspective on biomechanical integration. Elder Shaper Corinth offered to share the collective memory of their species, millions of years of experience condensed into a direct consciousness transfer. The process is completely safe, Zara assured her nervous colleagues. But it will fundamentally change how you understand the relationship between individual consciousness and collective knowledge. One by one, the Federation representatives experienced the vast tapestry of Shaper civilization. They felt the slow patience of geological time, the joy of watching barren worlds bloom into biomechanical paradises, the profound satisfaction of helping other species adapt and thrive. When the experience ended, Ambassador Korvac looked around at his colleagues with new understanding. We can't go back, he said simply. After experiencing what's possible, how can we accept limitation? Dr. Sethik nodded slowly. The question isn't whether the Federation should embrace biomechanical integration. The question is whether we can afford to reject it. Representative Mbenga looked at Zara with something approaching awe. Dr. Kethri, you've been living with this perspective for months. How do you maintain your individual identity while being connected to such vast collective consciousness? Zara smiled, a gesture that the biomechanical interface made visible as gentle patterns of light around her platform. The same way I learned to walk again after my accident. You adapt, you find new strengths, and you discover that who you become is often better than who you were. As their visit to the Shaper homeworld concluded, the Federation delegation faced a choice that would determine the future of interspecies cooperation. They could return to the familiar limitations of traditional Federation technology, or they could embrace a partnership that would transform every aspect of their civilization. The decision, Zara knew, would ultimately rest with the Federation Council. But the delegates who had experienced Shaper biomechanical integration would return as advocates for possibility rather than defenders of limitation. And sometimes that made all the difference. 1 year after the historic delegation to the Shaper homeworld, the Federation Council chambers buzzed with anticipation as representatives from over 200 species gathered for the most significant vote in galactic history. The question before them was simple in its wording, but revolutionary in its implications: whether to approve the biomechanical integration initiative that would transform Federation civilization. Dr. Zara Kethri moved through the vast chamber with fluid grace, her platform now so enhanced with Shaper biomechanical systems that the boundary between technology and biology had become meaningless. Crystalline elements grew and shifted in response to her thoughts, while electromagnetic fields carried her consciousness seamlessly between individual awareness and collective knowledge. "Nervous?" asked Marcus Webb, who had been promoted to chief engineer of the Integration Initiative and now served as Zara's closest advisor. "Excited," she corrected, watching as delegates filed into their species-specific seating areas. 3 years ago, I thought my career was over because I couldn't walk. Today, we're voting on whether the Federation is ready to take its next evolutionary step. The chamber itself had been modified with Shaper biomechanical enhancements as a demonstration of the technology's potential. Living crystalline formations provided real-time translation not just of spoken languages, but of the electromagnetic patterns that carried emotion and intent across species barriers. For the first time in Federation history, true interspecies communication was possible. Ambassador Korvac took his position at the central podium, his own biomechanical interface suit allowing him to address the assembly through both traditional audio and direct electromagnetic transmission. "Distinguished delegates," he began, his words carried simultaneously through sound waves and bioelectric fields. "We gather today to consider a proposal that would fundamentally alter the relationship between Federation species and their environments." The chamber fell silent as the implications of the moment settled over the assembled representatives. Some had spent the past year advocating passionately for the initiative, while others had raised concerns about everything from cultural preservation to species sovereignty. "Dr. Kethery," Ambassador Korvac continued, "as our primary liaison with the Shapers and the architect of biomechanical integration protocols, would you present the final proposal to the Council?" Zara moved to the center of the chamber, her platform's biomechanical systems interfacing seamlessly with the crystalline formations that had been grown specifically for this presentation. Immediately, the air around her filled with holographic displays showing Shaper worlds, Federation planets enhanced with biomechanical integration, and the remarkable results achieved by early adopter colonies. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carried through both technological amplification and biomechanical resonance. 18 months ago, we discovered that adaptation has no limits, only the boundaries we accept. The holographic displays showed the transformation of 3 Federation colonies that had volunteered for biomechanical integration pilot programs. Worlds that had been struggling with resource depletion, environmental degradation, and interspecies conflicts were now thriving paradises of biological and technological harmony. Colony Epsilon 7 was facing ecological collapse due to mining operations that had stripped away 90% of its topsoil. Zara explained as the displays showed the planet's remarkable transformation. Biomechanical integration allowed the colonists to restore the ecosystem while actually increasing resource production through symbiotic relationships with engineered organisms. Representative Thalarian of the Regelian Confederation raised his hand. "Dr. Kethery, the Regelian Science Council has reviewed your data extensively. While the results are impressive, we remain concerned about the long-term implications of biological dependency on alien organisms." Zara had expected this question and dozens of similar concerns. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show detailed biological analysis of integration subjects over extended time periods. "Representative Thalarian, our studies show that biomechanical integration enhances natural biology rather than replacing it," she explained. "The Shaper organisms don't make species dependent. They make them more adaptable, more capable, more themselves." Dr. Sethick, now serving as the Andorian representative on the Integration Committee, stood to address his colleagues' concerns. "I shared those same worries before experiencing integration firsthand. What I discovered was that the technology doesn't diminish who we are, it amplifies our potential." But not all the delegates were convinced. Representative Korvex of the Centaurian hegemony voiced the concerns of several conservative species factions. "Dr. Kethery, while we acknowledge the impressive benefits you've documented, the Centaurian hegemony cannot support a proposal that would fundamentally alter the biological nature of Federation species. The risks to cultural identity and species sovereignty are too significant." Zara nodded respectfully. These were legitimate concerns that deserved thoughtful response rather than dismissal. Representative Corvex, I understand your concerns about cultural preservation, she said. But consider this. Integration is voluntary, reversible, and customizable to each species' specific needs and values. No one is proposing to force biological changes on unwilling populations. Marcus stepped forward to address the technical aspects of the concern. The biomechanical systems can be programmed to respect cultural and biological boundaries. Each species maintains complete control over the extent and nature of their integration. The debate continued for hours as delegates raised questions about implementation timelines, resource allocation, security protocols, and the fundamental philosophical implications of partnership with living technology. Some species advocated for immediate full integration, while others requested extended pilot programs or selective adoption. Through it all, Zara found herself serving as translator not just of languages, but of concepts that spanned different approaches to existence. The Shapers thought in terms of geological time and planetary consciousness. Federation species thought in terms of individual achievement and technological progress. Finding common ground required bridging gaps that were philosophical as much as practical. The question, said Elder Representative Vol of the Vulcan High Council, is whether Federation civilization is prepared for the level of cooperation that biomechanical integration requires. Logic suggests significant benefits, but the emotional and cultural adaptation may prove challenging. Elder Representative Vol raises an important point, Zara acknowledged. This isn't just about accepting new technology. It's about embracing a different relationship with our environment and with each other. She gestured, and the holographic displays shifted to show footage from the Shaper homeworld delegation. Federation representatives from a dozen species working together on biomechanical projects. Their different physiologies and cultural perspectives enhanced rather than diminished by integration. What I learned from the Shapers, she continued, is that diversity becomes stronger through connection, not weaker. When species can share knowledge and capabilities directly through biomechanical interface, competition becomes collaboration and limitation becomes adaptation. Representative Mbenga of the Human Colonial Administration stood to address the assembly. The human delegation has spent the past year studying integration effects on our volunteer colonies. What we've found is that biomechanical enhancement doesn't change who we are. It helps us become who we were always capable of being. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates conferred with their advisors and debated among themselves. Zara watched the process with fascination, seeing the same patterns of acceptance and resistance that had marked every major advancement in Federation history. Ambassador Korvac called for order and announced the formal voting procedure. Each species would cast their vote electronically, with real-time tallies displayed for the entire assembly. As the voting began, Zara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago, she had been a disabled scientist fighting for the right to return to field work. Today, she was the architect of humanity's greatest contribution to Federation civilization, the demonstration that adaptation has no limits. The first votes appeared on the display screens. The human colonies voted unanimously in favor, followed quickly by enthusiastic support from the Andorian Confederation and the Altarian Republic. Several other species cast cautious approval votes with requests for graduated implementation timelines. But, as the voting continued, it became clear that the outcome was far from certain. The Centaurian hegemony led a block of conservative species in opposition, while others abstained pending further study and debate. This is closer than we hoped, Marcus murmured through their private communication channel. Democracy is supposed to be messy, Zara replied. The important thing is that we're having the conversation. As the final votes were tallied, the results appeared on displays throughout the chamber. In favor, 127 species opposed, 89 species abstaining. 31 species the motion had passed, but barely. Biomechanical integration would become Federation policy, but implementation would clearly require careful diplomacy and patience. Ambassador Korvac announced the results with diplomatic grace. The Biomechanical Integration Initiative is approved for gradual implementation with full respect for species sovereignty and cultural values. Participation remains voluntary. and extensive safeguards will be established to protect the interests of all Federation members. The chamber erupted in a mixture of celebration and concern as delegates processed the implications of the historic vote. Zara felt a surge of emotions that her biomechanical interfaces translated into patterns of light that danced through the crystalline formations around her. "Congratulations," Marcus said, his own emotional state visible through his biomechanical suit as warm golden patterns. "You just changed the course of galactic civilization." "We changed it," she corrected. "And this is just the beginning." As the formal session concluded, delegates began approaching Zara with questions about implementation timelines, technical specifications, and cultural adaptation protocols. She found herself at the center of a swirling conversation that would continue for months as the Federation worked to transform policy into reality. But amid the chaos of political and technical discussions, Elder Shaper Corinth approached through biomechanical interface, their vast consciousness carrying messages of congratulation and support. "The Council has chosen adaptation over limitation," Zara communicated through electromagnetic resonance. "The partnership can begin." "Beginning is the correct concept," Elder Corinth replied, their thoughts carrying the patience of geological time. "Evolution is not an event, but a process. The Federation has taken its first step toward true symbiosis." That evening, as the chamber emptied and delegates departed for their home worlds to begin implementation planning, Zara found herself alone with Marcus in the biomechanical garden that had been created as a demonstration area. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, watching as bioluminescent plants responded to their presence with gentle waves of colored light. "About what?" "About agreeing to that first meeting 3 years ago. About letting a stubborn human engineer convince you that limitations were just problems waiting for solutions." Zara laughed, a sound that the biomechanical organisms translated into spirals of silver light through the garden's canopy. "Marcus, 3 years ago, I thought my story was ending. I thought the accident had defined who I would be for the rest of my life." She gestured at the living garden around them, at the crystalline formations that had grown to support their conversation, at the biomechanical platform that had become an extension of her own consciousness. "What I learned is that endings are just beginnings we haven't recognized yet. The accident didn't end my story. It started the most important chapter of my life." Marcus nodded, his biomechanical suit displaying patterns of satisfaction and contentment. "So what happens next?" "Next, we help 200 Federation species learn to adapt and evolve together. We help them discover that diversity becomes strength through connection. We help them understand that the greatest discoveries come from refusing to accept limitations." She paused, looking up at the stars visible through the garden's transparent canopy. Somewhere out there, Federation worlds were preparing to embrace biomechanical integration. Colonies would transform themselves from struggling outposts to thriving ecosystems. Species that had never been able to communicate directly would share knowledge and consciousness across biological barriers. "Next," she said finally, "we help the Federation learn that evolution never ends. It just finds new and better ways to begin." As the biomechanical garden pulsed with bioluminescent acknowledgement of her words, Dr. Zara Kethery realized that her greatest discovery wasn't about alien biology or technological integration. It was about the fundamental truth that had driven her entire career. Adaptation has no limits, only the boundaries we choose to accept. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries come from refusing to accept those boundaries at all. 5 years later, the first generation of biomechanically enhanced Federation citizens graduated from integrated universities throughout known space. They were artists who could paint with living light, engineers who designed with living materials, diplomats who could communicate across species barriers with unprecedented clarity. They were the children of adaptation, proof that evolution continued not through genetic chance, but through conscious choice. They represented the Federation's greatest achievement, a civilization that had learned to grow beyond its limitations by embracing the infinite possibilities of partnership with life itself. And, at the center of it all, Dr. Zara Kethery continued her work as both scientist and symbol, living proof that every ending was just a new beginning waiting to be discovered, and that the greatest adventures began the moment someone decided that impossible was just another problem to solve.